Welcome to everyone who's here. We look forward to your participation. And let me begin now by introducing our first speaker. Andrew Altman is the Chief Executive of the Olympic Park Legacy Company in London. London is probably the first city to create a company to manage what happens after the Olympic Games, well before the Games have ever happened, to secure the legacy. Andy, great to have you here. The floor is yours to begin the conversation.
There it is. Okay, great. Thank you, Greg, and thank you for having me today. I'm happy to be here. I run the Olympic Park Legacy Company, which was established about 3 years ago to be responsible for the legacy of the Games and the regeneration. So what I'm going to talk about today briefly is what London's doing. This is the Olympic year for London, only 5 months away until Games in July, till the opening ceremony. So it's a very big year in terms of getting prepared for the Games, but also importantly, a big year as we're preparing for the legacy of the Games. I think what I really was asked to talk about is what are some of the lessons about how London is approaching this. And I'll speak to this slide in a moment, but I think the most important thing to say is that London's bid for the Olympics was all about the regeneration. It was all about how to use the Olympics, a major event, as a part of the regeneration strategy, that London's growth was moving to East London, which is where the Games will primarily be held. And it was very much about how to use the sports, use Olympics to build an infrastructure and to leave an infrastructure that would then set the stage for the growth of London as London grows from a city of 7 million people to a city that will be 8 million people. So huge pressure on the city. And I think so from the very, very beginning, the Games, the bid for the Olympics was really all about the larger strategy. So if I had one message today through everything I'm going to show, it is that the major sports event, whether it's Olympics or Commonwealth Games or other international championships, in terms of regeneration, should very much start from what is your vision for the city? What is your vision for the region? What is your vision for growth? And then looking at how a major event can be supportive of that vision and essentially be used as an infrastructure project and a way to galvanize, I think, political support and alignment of political interests, of capital, of community spirit, to put all of that together as part of your strategy. I think where London, as you can tell, I'm not originally from London. We came over 2.5 years ago to run this company that was set up, a government company to do this. Where London's, I think, brilliance was from the start recognizing that they were looking for an opportunity for how to facilitate the growth of the city. For years and years, London had talked about how to move east, how its growth had to go east. And it was really all about timing and opportunity. So when the Games came up, when the opportunity to bid came up, it was very much fit into that strategy. It was a strategy around brownfield reclamation. It was a strategy around building on transport, where the Games are going to be located, sits on what is now one of the busiest transportation networks in the city, which was very important because it wasn't about trying to put the Games somewhere where there wasn't an infrastructure and then hoping that things would happen around it. It's very much built as a part of the city. So it really has been a continuation of a long-held government policy, and that vision has stood the test of time, which has allowed transcending different political parties. There's been a change in government, but the commitment to the Olympics has not changed, the budget has not changed, and the community support has not changed. So that alignment of interest, because it was founded in a vision. So what I'm going to show, is this telling me actual time?
No,
it just keeps clicking without,
Yeah.
okay. You have to so just kick me when it's, this, I thought I would show this, because although it doesn't give you a picture of London, it's just 3 abstract master plans. The most important point of this is that from the beginning, from the start of this project, there were 3 plans, and in a way, from moving from left to right, you have the plan for the games, and you can see the main Olympic Stadium there, just in the sort of the center of the lower center of the plan. You can see then it moves into what we call transformation, which is when the games are over. We have to go in and redo the venues, prepare them for legacy, get development plots ready, finish the amenities, the park, and then what we call Legacy 2030, which is the build-out. Because what we're doing is creating a new center for London. This is going to be one of the most dynamic new urban centers, not only in London and the UK, but within Europe. It'll be over close to 20 million square feet. It'll have close to 15,000 residences in total when you add all up what's going on. So this is about literally creating a new piece of city. And I'd say the most important thing is that this kind of planning was done from the start. And in fact, almost you could say was done from right to left rather than left to right, which is thinking about legacy and making sure everything you do for games fits into legacy as opposed to vice versa. So often you find, I think, the mistake of, trying to put, let's first plan for games and then we'll figure it out later. I mean, even we were discussing earlier today how Sydney, which had a very good games, they admit that it was 9 years later until they started a master plan. Well, you can see already from the start in London where the success of I think why London will be successful is from the beginning thinking about this kind of evolution of a piece of the city and what that vision is, what you want to create as a new great place. And then you're not trying to figure out later how to literally retrofit the Olympics or retrofit your growth story back to figure out what to do with venues. They're there from the beginning. So that very simple logic permeates everything because it gets to how you, not only how you master plan, so you have a sustainable community in terms of the integration of parklands, communities, housing, transport, so it's a total place, a total community, which this will be, down to how you design venues, so they'll be flexible in their use in legacy, so they can be easily retrofitted. So many of our venues, the aquatic center, for example, or the stadium, already prepared for their legacy use, and we already have users for how we're going to, the aquatic center, how we're going to use the media center, how we're going to use the stadium. Each of those has a legacy use. And I think this just is a picture of, sort of what a vision of what it would look like, but you can see each of these venues, then the sports venues become a part of the city. They're integrated into the fabric of the city. The thing we didn't want are venues standing on their own, isolated, seas of, just sitting around vast public spaces or parking lots or whatever it may be that is often the fate of these venues, but actually just to have literally the fabric of the city starts to move in. Each of the areas that you can see, neighborhoods coming along the parklands, stadiums surrounded by housing, and we're actually doing all of that now. So my other lesson, I guess, in the short time to sort of wrap up is one has to align your vision, right, that you have vision for urban development. Your major sports event is an infrastructure project that helps you to execute that vision, but you have to also align vision with governance and execution. I had a professor a long time ago in graduate school who said to plan is human and to execute is divine. So you really need to figure out from the start, how do you execute? So London's lesson, I think, is not only in its strategy, but that it set up the governance and the institutions to make sure that that vision will be realized. And the way it's done that is it set up 3 different companies, very focused on their mission. First company, Olympic Delivery Authority, brilliant job building the site. It's a massive site. It's 500 acres. It was brownfield, contaminated land, 300 ownerships, all had to be completely cleared and literally building on what was a brownfield to a greenfield site. That was their job, to build the infrastructure, £6 billion on site, and they've done that. And that's complete before games. Second company, the organizing committee, all they're focused on is putting on the games. That's what they do. They're not worried about the construction. They weren't worried about the legacy. And obviously it's a part of their mission, but they are focused on delivering the best games, raising private sector money, dealing with sponsors. third company which London did before Games was what I run, the Olympic Park Legacy Company, focused solely on legacy. So 3 years before Games, our job was to do the master planning and to worry about the uses of each of these venues, what will happen after Games. So getting users, occupiers for the stadium, for the aquatic center, how the park is going to be run, the programming events, starting the development program, so that we move right into position. So as soon as Games are over, we go onto the 500-acre site. There's a smooth transition of ownership. And then what's been set up in terms of governance to make sure that that vision will be realized for what is a 20 and 30-year regeneration project is we have been given, not only as the landowner and the owner of the venues, so we have that, but we also have the infrastructure money to build. We'll have another 500 million pounds to rebuild the site and prepare it. We'll have the planning power to make sure that to the private sector and the communities that there's certainty as to what the future will be. So we have the planning power, the land, and the capital, and it's all set up to make sure that that's executing the vision so we can move smoothly from Games to transformation, as I showed before, and into the third phase, which is really starting that regeneration. And I think that's the key to that success, is that alignment. And that has really transcended, as I said, we've had complete political support. We'll be what's called a mayoral development corporation, a development corporation with those set of powers to make sure that that investment that's been made of very scarce public dollars, very significant, can be carried through to the future, and recognizing that these big projects are complicated and they have to be able to survive the kind of vicissitudes, the sort of ups and downs of political movements, of economic movements, and be able to stay the course over that period of time. So you don't say game's over and now we've done it all, but recognizing there has to be an institution that can work with the private sector, work with the communities. These are some of the poorest boroughs in London. We have to bring those benefits to these communities, and that the way you do that is by having a focused institution rooted in the community, but at the same time with enough autonomy and powers to be able to continue to realize that vision and the tenacity that's necessary to execute these projects.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. And colleagues, I'll ask you to show your appreciation for the speakers at the end. There's so much in what you said that was crystal clear. I can't help just summarizing it quickly. You said the purpose was regeneration. You said that there were, in effect, 3 simultaneous plans: before Games, just after Games, and long-term legacy. You said there were 3 companies: build the facilities, run the Games, secure the legacy. You said that there's a no white elephants policy, and I gather that you've got 80% of the facilities already have a post-Games use and they're integrated. And then lastly, and I think very tellingly, you said there's money, there's resources, and there's authority to reconfigure the facilities immediately after the event. And I think as lessons from London, that's a very interesting set of ideas. So thank you very much, Andy. Of course, there'll be a time very shortly to have a conversation with Andy and ask him lots of questions. Colleagues, let's go immediately to Barcelona, if we may. And we want to have the remarks from Mateo Hernandez. Mateo is the Chief Executive of Barcelona Global, a membership organization of leading businesses, institutions, and individuals from Barcelona. Mateo, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk about the thing that happened 20 years ago, 1992, on this summer. We will celebrate the 20th anniversary of our 1992 Olympic Games. But I think that we are not here to talk about what happened 20 years ago, but especially what happened after that. And as Andy mentioned, we could say that people in Barcelona in 1986, when they were nominated to host the 1992 Olympic Games, they were really afraid of things like white elephants, things that like huge debt for a small city. And so the Olympics were planned not as an objective by itself, but especially as an excuse, a powerful excuse to really transform the city as they did, and as we can recognize it now. In terms of infrastructures, provision, the city changed completely in terms of connectivity, from ICT to ring bells to the new airport, whatever. Also on the visitors' economy, we would be afraid or really surprised knowing that just before the Olympics, Barcelona was not a touristic city at all. There were less than 4% of our GDP was on tourism. Today is about 14%, so huge shift on that period. And also it was used as an excuse for urban development, and that was presented, and that you can see those changes today here at MIPIM on the Barcelona stand, where due to the transformation of the city, 1 million square meters land in the city center were able to be transformed for the new economy, and that's what we know as the 22 At district, prepared to host ICT companies just in the middle of Barcelona. And also it was an excuse to learn how public-private partnership was to be built, because the Olympic Games in Barcelona were developed through a really strong public-private partnership. And last but not least, were an excuse to build a powerful brand for a city that before the Olympics were not known elsewhere except for being a nice city but a little gray city. And today, Barcelona is a well-known city everywhere in the world, and that had developed several facilities and infrastructures to be present today in different sectors, as we were present 1 week ago on the mobile technology, being the Mobile World Capital, and having the GSMA Congress in Barcelona and hosting more than 67,000 ICT leaders in Barcelona, and trying to position Barcelona as capital for the mobile technology. But that's been a process of more than 20 years, and the Olympics were the catalyst. Now, what we can see when we look what's going on internet, which is where things now happen in terms of opinion, we can see that when 2 of the 3 times Barcelona is mentioned on the websites, on the networks, on 2.0 things are mentioned due to sports, mainly because our football team, maybe because many sports facilities are around Barcelona. You can go to Barcelona for Formula 1, for motorcycles, for high-level tennis, for world championships on different disciplines, and now also for new sports on FX, for instance. So now Barcelona, due to the Olympics, due to its sports ambience or atmosphere, or due to its football, or due to its infrastructures on sports that allowed us to host huge events on sports, Barcelona is known as a sports capital in Europe. And now the challenge for Barcelona is how to transform this perception of being a sports capital into becoming economic, and sports becoming an economic engine to foster jobs, companies, and opportunities in Barcelona. And when you look closer to that, and when you look behind the big stadiums, the big clubs, what you realize in Barcelona is that you would find some of the best TV producers on sports events there, because they were trained on that. And they began to be trained on the 1992 Olympics, and then following different events. So some of the best TV producers on sports events are in Barcelona, or were trained in Barcelona, but also when you have such a club like Football Club Barcelona, and I think that everyone knows it, trainers are well trained there. Also, people who with big textile industries want to test their products in a city like Barcelona, with such atmosphere, with such clubs. So now the challenge is how to transform this perception of being a capital for sports, how to transform those big infrastructures, those big events, those big clubs into economic activity. And there are many, many substantial things there that allow Barcelona to begin with a strategy to attract investments on fashion and sports, on textile and sports, on health and sports, When you go to different wealthy places now and you tell, well, the doctors that are taking care of Messi are based in Barcelona, people want to go there to be...
To become Messi.
Exactly. and that's a huge opportunity for Barcelona to keep in mind when thinking on investing there. And also, in terms of law and sports, some of the best specialists on law and sports are based in Barcelona, as well as on advertisement. And to end, also on events. And precisely today, Barcelona is opening one of the major events on sports, but not a sports event, but as an event talking about sports and economy, which is the Global Sports Forum that hosts some of the best thinkers, companies, advertisers, doctors on sports economy, and that's happening in Barcelona. So it's a place not only to visit, to go, sports are also, or we are trying them to become a powerful economic engine for Barcelona. And to end and to invite you to visit the city of Barcelona stand here at MIPIM, only to keep in mind that a way you to have an excuse to visit it is that they are every day making if you give your card,
a raffle
for a Messi T-shirt, signed personally by him. So you are invited to not to visit there to put the card, but to know more about this fantastic city. Thank you.
Great, Matteo. Thank you very much indeed. And I suppose that the key point you're making is that what began life as the physical transformation of the city through the Olympics has actually become a cluster development initiative for a series of high-value, globally trading companies in law, medicine, advertising, media, merchandising, and all of these other things that are spin-offs from being a capital of sport. And be very interesting, I think, in the conversation to ask you really how far can this go and how many other cities could also do it? Is it a unique advantage for Barcelona or could others do it too? Let's come back to that in the discussion. Our next guest is Brian Field. Brian is a professor. He's an economist, a planner, and he's really the chief urban and city advisor at the European Investment Bank, the world's largest multilateral lending institution. I'll leave Brian to tell you why the world's largest multilateral lending institution is involved in sports events. But Brian, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Is this mic on?
Yes.
It's on. Great. By way of prefacing my comments, I've produced a presentation which you can take away and read. It gives you some background material. There are about 12 slides. I shall only talk to one slide. So the presentation is there for you to take away afterwards. I'll provide you with the context in what I have to say. I'm speaking a little bit off the cuff, therefore, but there are two observations that I'd like to make as a preliminary before I put my slide up. The first one is that, and it's interesting that Barcelona and London have come before me. Barcelona taught us the importance of exploiting the advantages of major sports events to promote the integrated regeneration of particular neighbourhoods within a city, and the importance, the absolutely crucial importance of legacy. I think what London has taught us is it's taught us that they looked at what Barcelona did and they exploited the good bits to maximum advantage. I'll explain why. We had a very good talk from Andy on the importance of legacy in informing the London Olympics. There's a little bit of rewriting of history here. Sadly, I'm from that part of London. I'm also an urban planner who worked in that part of London, and I now work for a bank that funded several of the projects that have contributed to the regeneration of Stratford. And what actually happened was that a lot of the projects, planners have been trying for 50 years plus to regenerate East London, to do something on the eastern side of London which would help to balance London, because everything happens on the west. And Stratford has been the focus for much of that planning, and very little has been achieved over the years. I suppose the mid-1960s and the publication of the GLDP was the first formal recognition in an approved plan that Stratford should become a major regeneration area. But very little happened. A number of projects were in the pipeline, but these projects were going to take some time to come to fruition. Time passed. Crossrail was in discussion. The M11 Express Link was in discussion. The redevelopment of Stratford was in discussion. The Channel Tunnel rail link was already approved. There were a whole range of projects that were in the pipeline, and what the then Mayor of London saw was a series of projects which, if he put a stadium in the middle of those projects, he could translate into an Olympic bid. And why would that be an advantage? Well, the reason that that's an advantage is for one very, very crucial fact. If you win an Olympic bid, you have to deliver by a specific date. There can be no prevarication. Once a bid is won, whether the government like it or not, and I'm not sure that the government was were too happy about the bid when it first went in. They were very happy when they won, eventually. You're committed to delivering the infrastructure. And what we see in Stratford is the most remarkable regeneration project that I've come across in my long career, of an area which was really pretty grim beforehand, but in a very, very short space of time, with much of the key infrastructure which would normally be delivered over a 50-year period being delivered within the blink of an eye. It really is quite astonishing. And in fact, one of the interesting features that Legacy, and Andy, forgive me if I've got this slightly wrong, but one of the interesting features of the Legacy is that there are only 2 projects which have caused the Legacy company a little bit of difficulty. I mean, all the projects have caused some difficulty, but most of them they've been able to address with consummate ease, given what's happened with other Olympic bids. But the only 2 projects that have caused some difficulty have been the stadium and the media centre. And it's interesting, the stadium and the media centre were the 2 bits that had to be transplanted onto the original infrastructure proposals to create the Olympic bid. So it's hardly surprising. And I'm very optimistic that what's being proposed for the stadium, particularly with the athletics event now being awarded to London, will be very, very successful. So Barcelona taught us about the importance of legacy, and London has demonstrated it with in graphic and overt terms, which should inspire other bidders to get in there and get on with it, because all of that infrastructure has now been developed and brought forward in a way that might not have happened so quickly. I think it would have happened, but not for another 50 years, certainly not in my lifetime. Right, one slide. We've got a clicker somewhere, but we haven't got one on my table. Have you got one there? Thank you. Let's go to the slide which says something. This is all background. This is my key slide. So what are the advantages of sports generally and urban regeneration? Well, first of all, the development of sports facilities can promote the regeneration of inner city neighbourhoods and districts. 12 months ago, we had major riots in London, not just in London, in many UK cities. The rioting started in North London, in an area of North Tottenham. What is interesting is that shall we say, the regeneration of that area has now been identified as a key public policy initiative that needs to be implemented sooner rather than later. And as part of that regeneration initiative, all parties have recognised the importance of including the redevelopment of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as the catalyst for the regeneration of that neighbourhood. I mean, that's interesting. That's something that might not have been considered years ago, but people can relate to it. People can ally themselves with it, and it enables you to, something that I'll talk about later, it enables you to rebrand the area if you do it properly. They're, of course, endeavouring to imitate what Arsenal did very successfully, their great rivals, with the Emirates Stadium in and around the Highbury area, the Sobel Centre area. It can facilitate the redevelopment of large brownfield sites. I'm reminded of the redevelopment of parts of Lisbon following the holding of the European Football Championships. I'm not sure which one it was, Benfica or Sporting. I think it was the Sporting site where they redeveloped the stadium, but it wasn't just a question of building the stadium. It was taking advantage of a large brownfield site, building a shopping complex, a housing complex, everything to take advantage of the infrastructure or to give, shall I say, to give efficacy to the building of the infrastructure that would be needed to make the stadium a successful stadium for the games. A fabulous development which is now being imitated elsewhere. I know that in Athens, for example, for some years, Panathinaikos have been looking at doing something similar because they have a stadium on a very valuable site right in the heart of the city, which is not well located from a transport perspective, and you could get a double regeneration project going there. But it's interesting that all of it is linked to the importance of stadia development. To accelerate the implementation of key urban infrastructure and other urban development commitments. Well, that's what London has done fantastically successfully. It really is astonishing. I look back as a planner who's worked in London, as a planner, worked for local government. We talk about the success and the speed with which we've developed the Docklands area in and around Canary Wharf. I mean, it's pretty impressive. What they're doing in Stratford, they're doing in a quarter of the time. That is very impressive. Moreover, Stratford knows where it's going. Docklands has been a great success, and it knows where it's going now, but it didn't really know where it's going when it started. Stratford always knew where it was going. And the thing that I find most impressive about the development is when you go there to look at the quality. The quality, it really is quite exceptional. To leverage further investment and development projects from both public agencies and the private sector. Well, one of the big things about Stratford is now, I said that many of the projects in Stratford were in the pipeline before the Olympic bid was won. That was true. It's not true now. There are a number of major developments that, following the Olympic bid, were attracted to Stratford. The density of development also increased quite significantly when the Olympic bid was won. So the very act of concentrating development in this area and developers knowing that the infrastructure would be in place by a specific date has leveraged in a lot of additional development from other agencies. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if a lot more wasn't to follow. And the most important thing is, for me, is changing a city's image and brand. Stratford, I'm sorry if there's anyone from Stratford here. I feel I can say this because I've lived in this part of London and worked in this part of London, was, quite frankly, a dump. It was awful. It wasn't Stratford's fault. It had overlived its sell-by date. It was on the way down. Stratford is now a vibrant, attractive area that has a fabulous future, and a very different future that will place it, I think, really at the heart of the capital rather than on the periphery. So I think changing a city's image and brand is something that Stratford has learned. And who have we learnt it from? We've learnt it from Barcelona, because I think Barcelona was the first city to do a job of work on that. As far as our investment is concerned, we like to support this kind of development, but not the sports facilities per se. As a bank, we make money available for all of the associated infrastructure. We like the fact that there is an intensification in the implementation process, or an acceleration in the implementation process, and we like the fact that the very act of going for a major event in one location means that you're obliged to come up with an integrated planning solution, because we like integrated planning. So the bank is there with money to support, shall we say, the associated development rather than the stadia per se. Although we have done some sporting events, sporting venues themselves. I'll just leave it there and we'll open to questions later.
Great, Brian, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting personal observations and reflections as well about why London needed the Olympics, if you like, and why that catalyst was required, and also what London has learned from Barcelona. I suppose you said acceleration is key. You said integration is key, that the bank only lends when there's integration there. You said quite a lot about leverage, and particularly the ability to leverage investment outside of the sports venues itself, and we might talk about that later. And you made a particular point about changing the image and identity of a location through a sports event. Thank you very much. We look forward to the conversation. Our next speaker is Caspar Herzberg. He's Managing Director of Cisco Systems International BV. I know Caspar's going to talk a little bit about, how sports enable a city, let's say, to become smarter. Caspar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As someone who spends a lot of time in the East, in Asia Pacific, in China, I now, after London and Barcelona, want to take you to Beijing and to remind you of what I think were the extremely successful Beijing Olympics, a dazzling spectacle, a great step in terms of nation building for China, in terms of reintroducing China to the world. About $40 billion were spent by the Chinese government, and even the air quality in Beijing, for those of you who have been, improved dramatically during the event. At the same time, the economic impact, the long-term economic impact on Beijing as a city is extremely unclear. So what we have heard here from London and Barcelona, for some reason, does not seem to be, or is not going to be the case in Beijing. And this is particularly interesting as Beijing experiences the same phenomenon that London, with 1 million people joining from 7 to 8 million. Well, globally, 500 million people are urbanizing, and many, many of these in China. As a matter of fact, 100 new cities, entire cities of 1 million people will be built by 2025. Now, increasingly then, cities are competing for talent with each other. Cities like the tier 1 and tier 2 cities in China, cities like Dubai, like Hong Kong, like Singapore. And they need to have the infrastructure to manage this urbanization effectively and be attractive to people who have talent, who will spend money. At the same time as you have this urbanization trend, you have massive technological change. In 2004, you had 300 million devices being connected to the internet. In 2020, so just 8 years from now, we estimate it will be 50 billion. And we believe that the services that you can create around managing these devices, these 50 billion devices, are going to have very, very important effects on productivity and on the environmental well-being of the people in these cities. Now, what are the hurdles to overcome in terms of leveraging this rapid technological change? And how can we use a mega sports event to do so? And from a planning point of view, a lot of it has already been answered by my esteemed colleagues here. I just want to quickly look at the role that technology can play in an event and around the event. In the event itself, most of you know and see how the sports event is watched by the spectators all around the world, you know, in hundreds of different angles, all at the same time. So, at the same time, the spectator experience, anything from smart ticketing to targeted advertisement telling you that, you know, 10 seats from you to the right, there's a Hershey's bar or a coffee that you like based on your profile. All these things, all these services, including, frankly, safety and security services, video surveillance, crowd control, managing the flow of people, all of that makes, in the future, increasingly these events smart events. However, all these services, all these devices are connected to the same infrastructure, and you can leverage that same infrastructure for the rest of the affected community, as you're doing now in London with BT. We're actually participating with you on that, and you can roll out the same safety and security with command and control centers all across the, as I said, the affected communities. They've done that in South Africa with lasting effects, because post the World Cup, the successful World Cup, crime stayed down. Other things didn't work, is my understanding, but definitely the impact of the rollout of video surveillance on the city of Johannesburg has been very successful. At the same time, you can leverage that same infrastructure for community outreach programs, targeted training for the people in the community, vocational training like net academies, for example, again in London. You can do transportation solutions like they're implementing now in Nice that brings the information that you need as a commuter or as a spectator, as a visitor to the event, onto your PDA. And lastly, and often overlooked, real estate and the facility management itself. The buildings that you build for your athletes, the stadium itself, can be energy efficient, can be smart buildings. So all of these together can not only make the event itself smart, but also help you achieve productivity goals, energy efficiency that I come to in a minute. Now, the hurdles, I think we've heard them. Timelines, the pressure of timelines, the short-term focus, prioritizing. There's also another one, managing the multiple stakeholders. But there's also the post-event financial drain. Very often, while you do the event, and the event is very successful, after that, municipalities, people in the community just do not want to hear about another infrastructure investment. They don't have the money, and they're tired. This again was feedback that I received in South Africa post the event. Now, as you do the overall urban development master plan, we believe that you should do an ICT master plan for the services that you want to deploy within the event and the services that you want to deploy long-term in the community. Do a business case around that, get buy-in from the stakeholders. And one example where we are doing that, or actually more the example of a city that is doing that, is Incheon in South Korea, the host for the 2014 Asian Games. By going for this comprehensive planning approach, by this, the strategic approach, they expect revenues of 15 billion for all these various services that then would live on post the event, produce money, create a knowledge economy, a GDP increase of 9.5%, 375,000 new jobs, and increased energy efficiency. They also, the study also says that crime would go down by 20%, but those of you who've been to Incheon would not believe that because there isn't that much crime. So it's already a pretty well-managed place. Anyway, this brings me to the end of my presentation. Back to you.
Casper, thank you very much indeed. What an interesting set of insights. And what you've really majored on there is the ability of the event to be a catalyst for the integration of systems, I suppose, using technology, and then to use that improved technology platform to achieve all sorts of other things. I'm also greatly interested in your case study of Incheon, a place I know well. Hard to believe that place has risen out of the ground so quickly. But the idea that you can then use technology to drive these broader outcomes of productivity, growth, and carbon reduction and everything else, very, very helpful. And again, we look forward to some conversation with Casper in a minute. Our final speaker this morning, before we begin our debate, is Pierre Guillard. He's He's Director of Market for Cities and Residential at GDF Suez. I know that Pierre has an interesting perspective on the role of major sports events. So, Pierre, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, all of you. I am from the GDF Suez Energy Services BU in GDF Suez, and I am only in charge of this market in France. So please be cool with my English language, because when I speak with the French measure, I don't very often use English, you know. So just some key figures of the group. We are present in 70 countries, in Europe, of course, in Asia too, and in East of Europe. And we have 2020 employees all over the world. I want to be a focus about London, not better than Andrew, of course, but the way we be a partner, a private partner, for these Olympic Games, and the way after how we can participate to environmental aspect of this construction. We have been, so not for the Olympic Games in Barcelona, but other quarter interested, 20 aerobas, and we have since 1998, sorry, in France, with the World Championship of Football in Paris. We deal with the Stade de France, all the utilities in this area. So the vision for us is effectively to be a partner in order this area for sports events become a successful way to live together, to conjugate talents and energies to implement the city for all of the inhabitants, the owner, and have a solution realistic, durable, and acceptable environmental integration. I just come back for the Olympic Games, but Andrew presented is much better than I can do that. It's interesting to have a look at the different actors of the way the Olympic Games are built, and so we have been in charge of try to find solution about the sustainability targets the City of London has for this Olympic area. So 19% of demolition waste to be reused or recycled, 50% of material delivered by rail and water, and 50% of CO2 reduction, 40% reduction in potable water consumption. So we, after sportive competition between us and other actors, economic actors, we have win this concession. It's a concession for 40 years, though Andrew has present 3 plants, 2012, 2030, I believe, and 2040. And so we have a concession who be 40 years long in order to deliver district energy service all over this quarter. We have a good low capex to spend, and we made a network about 16 kilometers with 2 energy centers, and I will present you the source of energy we used. We have 2,000 megawatt heating installation, 64 megawatt cooling installation, and 30 megawatt electricity installation. if I can say that we will be the blood of this quarter, and we delivered energy all over the installation, of course for the Olympic Stadium, but also for future Olympic Village, Stanford City, and we will be in charge to deliver this heating system and cooling system for all the operator need it in the future. The challenge was very complicated because we have been preferred partner in October 2007, and we signed the concession in April 2008. We first contract deadline was in September 2008, and we have made the Westfield Shopping Center in 2011. We have to deal with the design, the procure, the construct, all of in the same time, and it's an extremely challenging and complex environment to work because all the actors of this construction have to take place all in the same time. Alors, the way of produce heating is a biomass plant, a very big biomass plant. You can visit it if you want, of course. And we have 3 megawatt biomass boiler and heat water for the network who delivered the energy all over the quarter. More technical presentation, and you can find the way to produce cooling system, to produce electricity. We have a 3-generation system in London, like in Lisbon, Lisboa, and it's a good it's a way to obtain the target of 50% lesser CO2 reduction. It was a design criteria. We have been sized for legacy, the future way of this quarter, and we have installed pre-insulated steel pipe all over the quarter. You can find in this plane 2 energy center. I can do that. You can refine the network. We have 70 substation for each different equipment we can find in this quarter, and you have the same figures of. And for the future opportunities, we can deliver the future promotion system during the 30 future years. Okay, you can the different phase of this quarter. Yes, that's the different area we have to deliver in the future. Another plan. And if you permit me, I get some words of the Lord Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, who said the Olympic Park and surrounding area is London's single most important regeneration project for the next 15 years. And he said, so I cannot wish the French too much success in 2012, but I would like to award a French company a gold medal for sustainability and delivering a project on time and on budget. Thank you very much.
Well, Pierre, congratulations for winning this gold medal from Mayor Boris Johnson. We're delighted. And I suppose the key The key thing to say, of course, is that energy delivery to this part of London was one of the big problems. And Andy and his colleagues have found a way to overcome that with your help. So I'm very grateful to you. You've talked about the energy and the environmental legacy of the Games. Now I'd like to get some dialogue going. We have an opportunity now for debate and discussion. We have some people with microphones moving around. It's not an opportunity to make a speech or to tell us your life story. But it is an opportunity to ask a great question. You're first, sir. If you speak, I think you'll find it will come.
Merci.
Okay.
Yes, this is to Andrew Altman. Andrew, tell me, Legacy 2030, how are you going to secure the legacy of the regeneration project for the community? My understanding is Legacy 2030 company is going to sell off the assets as quickly as possible to get the returns to stakeholders, and you have got no equation to keep the legacy, at the word, for the community of London and the rest of the country in place.
Well, that's an interesting question. Are you saying that you think that selling off the assets equals losing the legacy? Is that your view?
Without proper securitisation, yes. We're maths and Melrose. We're from Scotland. We have a problem now with the Commonwealth Games doing similar things, selling off all the assets without retaining the value of the project first instilled. What I'm saying to you, Andrew, is that you're more interested in making a fast buck to satisfy your stakeholders than actually hold on to the legacy of 2030, and that your suggestion is more of divine intervention, that you retain a legacy because you will release the assets to commercial entities which you have got no control of in the next 20, 30 years.
Great, okay. That's a very provocative question. Thank you very much. If you want to just think about that for a moment, we'll... if you want to answer it straight away, you can, but I wanted to get a few more questions first, if we could. Any other questions immediately before we go on? Okay, and if you want to pick that up, I'd also like to ask you to comment, if you would, on, once you've answered that, what about outside the Olympic Park? Because, of course, much of your focus has been inside. What's the approach to achieve a regeneration in the wider area? But pick up the first question.
I understand the question. The question is the selling off of assets early by not retaining control means you lose control of the legacy?
That's the suggestion that our question is
actually, no, that's not the approach. Actually, is very much by setting up the company, which is a government company coming under the mayor, will be the Mayoral Development Corporation in April. We actually are taking the role, a long-term role, as the estate manager. So if you look at how these great estates have created value in London, it's a very similar model. So we're not at all about selling off assets cheaply or too quickly. And in fact, by having the land ownership, we will look to long-term value creation, which will return much better value to, well, not only to the community, but also, to the public purse. By that I mean, if you were, well, I don't have the plan in front of me, but there'll be over 7,000 units of housing on site, all of the venues. We retain all of those. They will all be on, we will retain the leasehold, the freehold rather. It'll all be on leases. We will be able to control not only the quality of the design, but also sharing in the uplift and the value that's created. So the government has taken a very, I think, very smart, very prudent view, which is not to do that, which is not to fragment the site, not to take the site as you saw and say, sell the stadium here, sell a plot of land here, sell this here, because we have to pressurize this to get the wrong outcome. So the right outcome is, by retaining the ownership in a Mayoral Development Corporation, we can also address your question, Greg, which is make sure that jobs are created, actually go to local people. So for example, with the Aquatic Center and the multi-use arena, two major venues, we entered into an operating arrangement with Greenwich Leisure Company, an SME, a social enterprise. 65% of those jobs are going to local people. We have apprenticeships. We entered into an agreement with a firm Balfour Beatty to operate the park on our behalf. 70% of jobs, again, local people. The first phase of housing, family housing, 6 developers bidding. We have the freehold, work with them on sharing value, also creating affordable housing, looking at a community land trust. So the model is very much long-term stewardship, long-term value creation, and connecting with community regeneration. So it's far from a fragmented, sell-it-off asset disposal strategy.
Great. I assume that you're reassured by that, sir. Who else wants to come in? Yes, please, sir.
Yes, I have a question concerning the timeline. Did I get it right that the legacy company started working only 3 years before the Olympic Games? Was it right? In 2009 you started?
Depends what you mean by only 3 years before the Olympics.
But, yeah. Because then we heard from the JDF Suez manager, they signed the contract in 2008. So as the development company, decisions have already been made for the future development, and you're not in this decision process. You have to deal with facts which have been signed before. And the second fact is normally 3 years ago, 3 years before the event, all the sport infrastructure plans for stadiums, they are closed, they are under construction, and then you have to deal with engineers and security companies who tend maybe to oversize, and maybe this may block development. So how did you get this potential conflict in timeline?
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy?
No, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I mean, the company was set up 3 years before games, which hasn't been done before in other major events like this in the same way. The thinking about legacy was from the beginning, as I said, in terms of even the master planning and the thinking about the venues, didn't start just, the company was set up to be a focused entity on legacy to be able to take it forward. But the conceptualization from the start, which is I think the most important thing, was that legacy was thought of from the beginning. So even the master planning that was done for the games was about the long-term future. So the fact that the way the parklands were put in, the venues, the location of the venues, the building of the energy systems, what was pointed out here in terms of the concession agreement that you're pointing out with Kofoli, the amount of capacity built in to anticipate all of the development, not only in the park, but in the surrounding area. Everything was thought of in that way. There are certainly issues. I mean, I won't pretend. I mean, once you have a corporation set up dedicated to this, and a lot of what our role has been, and I think it's a positive, a constructive tension, has been between, thinking through once you have a client on board who's focused on that, is how to retrofit that. So we've just done a lot of work with the ODA, the Olympic Delivery Authority, in those specifications and design. Even though they were far along, we've still been able to make a number of changes in order to accommodate them for legacy. And then we take on all the work of transforming the venues after the games. So as I said, we now have all those contracts, we're in charge of those, and we are very much working to make sure those meet the operators, which is why, as you said, Greg, getting the operators on board, the no white elephants before games is important, because we now work with the people who are going to run those facilities, and we're making sure the specification for their retrofit meets what the legacy use and what the future customers will be.
Colleagues, while you think of some more questions, I'm going to abuse the chair's privilege and ask a few of my own. And Matteo, I wanted to start with you. You made the point that sports has become an important part of the Barcelona brand. I guess my question is there a danger in that? Is there a danger that suddenly or over time Barcelona is only associated with sports and fun and everything else? And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, I heard an unusual rumor that Barcelona is going to bid to host the Winter Olympics as well as the Summer Olympics. Is that true?
Well, it's both are true.
Oh, okay.
First, it's true that we have a sports club, which is Football Club Barcelona, also known as Barça, or you call it Barca, or no one. But this is a huge danger, and an example of it. Some weeks ago, we were within Barcelona Global with the Barcelona Football Club president, asking him to maybe chair the partners part of the brand agency which is being built in Barcelona, and he really cleverly answered, it's better not to be me as representative as for the private world, because I am, as Barcelona Football Club president, the biggest enemy of building a stronger economic Barcelona brand.
Yeah. Just before you carry on, Matteo, I seem to remember now I did hear another anecdote in the city, which was that one day the mayor was talking to the president of the club. Did he not say, thank you to this football club that has given its name to our great city?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This
is the problem.
It was maybe about 20 years ago when football was not as today.
Yeah.
Because now it's like a huge phenomenon. Everywhere you go from Barcelona and you say, I'm from Barcelona, people ask you about Messi, about sports. Even in the last place in China, everyone asks you about Barcelona, and when you are there talking about mobile technologies, we're talking about real estate investments, talking about the Olympic Games, they say, no, let's talk about Football Club Barcelona, let's talk about Messi, let's talk about European Champions League. And this is fantastic because it is a door to open, that opens you and people knows about you, but it's a huge danger not to be only the city that with the name of a football club, and this is a problem. But I think that with this example of the reaction of the current president of the Barcelona Football Club by saying, no, I don't have to be on the first line, I have to be behind, helping the brand to be stronger, it's a good example of how conscient the city is about this possible inconvenience, and this is a thing to manage, and it's true. And as well, it is true that we are trying to build a bit for Winter Olympics in 2022. Oh. This is an idea that...
I assume there's going to be snow in Barcelona at this time?
Well, it's an idea that comes from two sizes. One is the city, like saying, well, we have an asset, which is the Pyrenees, which is not far away from Barcelona. It's about, in bad moments, about 2 hours, 1 hour and a half away from the city of Barcelona. And this is an asset. This is a good asset. Pyrenees are a non-well-known brand for winter sports, but are a good place for winter sports. And linking the Barcelona brand with the Pyrenees brand is a good thing to create something new, which is linking the Mediterranean with the Pyrenees, linking winter sports with, and people who's aware of sports know that people that follows winter sports are usually high level incomes. So linking winter sports with Barcelona is a good way also to promote the Barcelona brand. It's a good way to do another thing, which is to build a stronger hinterland, Barcelona and its region, Catalonia. It's a good excuse also to build this linkage, but also it comes the idea not only from the sports sector in Barcelona, but also comes from a little bit of the Olympic community, because they know that now maybe after Barcelona and all those Olympic Games, Olympics are a huge thing, and I don't know the huge amount of money people in the Olympics win with the Olympic Games, but especially Summer Olympic Games. And they need for the Winter Olympic Games something to be brandy, to be trendy, to be fashionable. And I don't know how many people knows where Winter Olympic Games will be next time, but are in Russia, in Sochi. But I think that the Olympic movement knows that if the Olympics are in cities or places like Barcelona or like Vancouver, this phenomena of Winter Olympic Games will raise its capacity.
Fantastic. Well, good luck, because I guess Barcelona would be the first city to have hosted the summer and the Olympic and the Winter Olympics if it does it. Wow.
Not in the same year.
Not in the same year, no. And not in the same place either. Brian, can I come on to you and just ask, I suppose, the really fundamental question, which is, are fewer cities now going broke as a result of hosting these big events? And then you made the point, of course, that a Games, an Olympic Games, another sports event is a great catalyst for infrastructure. But is that partly because the cities have to bid to the national governments to get the money for the infrastructure? If they had more of their own self-financing mechanisms, perhaps they might not bother with the Olympics or the sports event and just do the infrastructure themselves.
Goodness gracious, that's a tough question. Before I answer, can I just make an observation about Barcelona in the Winter Olympics? I assume that this bid will be sponsored by Ryanair, because I know when you travel to a Ryanair destination, it's never where you think it's going to be. You know? Ryanair Frankfurt is about 2 hours from Frankfurt.
Yeah, it's just near Munich.
The Copenhagen airport it's in a different country, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, first of all, I think the importance of legacy and the importance of infrastructure, of developing infrastructure that has a life beyond the Olympics or beyond the sporting event, has meant that that cities now, don't go down the pan with their Olympic bids. There was a tendency pre-Barcelona for Olympic events to be an exercise in demonstrating how extravagant a city could be without any consideration of what would happen after the event. I haven't got any figures with me, and I don't want to sort of be unfair to anybody, but I know that Montreal had a few problems. I know that, fun enough, people point at the Athens Olympics and say that several of the facilities have been mothballed. Yes, several of the facilities have been mothballed, there's no doubt about that. But these are some of the venues, relatively low-cost venues, I might add, and not such high-profile venues. The actual infrastructure that was associated with the Athens Olympics has proved remarkably successful. The airport has been great. The link between the airport and the city centre has been fantastic. The development of some top-class hotels, which Athens was sadly lacking, has been pretty impressive. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that now, with legacy being important, and the IOC has done a pretty good job there in scoring legacy quite high when it awards games, has been influential in making sure that that's the case. I wonder about the South African World Cup experience. I have a declaring interest here. I was born in South Africa, and I was in South Africa for a holiday this Christmas. Actually, I went for a month, December, January, and certainly some of the spin-offs, some of the software, the security arrangements have proved remarkably successful. There's been a significant drop-off in crime. It's interesting that property values in Johannesburg, which is the South African city that has real problems with crime and security, and this was reflected in property values. Property values in Johannesburg have almost recovered to a level where they're now comparable with Cape Town. Now, this would have been unthinkable only 3 or 4 years ago. So that is quite remarkable. The general infrastructure has been fantastic. They perhaps went a little bit over the top with stadia. Now, you have to place it in context. If it was another country, you would say they've definitely gone over the top. But South Africans are sports mad, and they built a lot of stadia for the Olympics at the request of FIFA. FIFA insisted that there had to be so many new stadiums. What FIFA never took the trouble to investigate was the fact that South Africa was already awash with luxury stadiums. I don't know if any of you follow rugby, but if you watch a rugby match on the television from South Africa, it's always in a stadium which makes the stadia in Europe look pathetic. And some of these stadiums are 50 years old. They all could have been used for the Olympics. So there's a major new football stadium in Soweto, which is almost next door to Ellis Park, which was the biggest rugby stadium in the world until very recently. And the Lions, who play at Ellis Park, have now been instructed to move, that's the rugby team, to
Nasrec.
to the Soweto Stadium.
Yeah.
The same is happening in Cape Town, where there is a massive stadium at Green Park, which is almost next door to Newlands, where there is also an existing stadium, and the Stormers have been asked to move into that stadium. But the classic is the one in Durban, where there's a fabulous stadium. The football stadium there really is fabulous, not dissimilar from our Wembley Stadium with the arch. It's in a complex where there were already 3 stadiums. The main stadium for the Sharks, the stadium for its reserve team, because its reserve team isn't allowed the honour of playing in the main stadium, and now the 3rd stadium. So there's been a bit of an overkill with stadia, but the infrastructure has been good. And this is another important, a very, very important point. Keynes, in the general theory, talks about the fact that to promote economic development when you're in a recession or what have you, it doesn't matter what you do, but the public sector has to intervene. If they have to, they should build pyramids. Well, think of these stadia as pyramids, because the investment in the Olympic Games gave the South African economy an enormous kickstart, particularly to the unskilled and the semi-skilled.
Just to correct us, Brian, we know you mean the World Cup, not the Olympic Games.
I mean the World Cup.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean the World. I mean the World Cup. Sorry, forgive me. Forgive me.
Great, thank you very much, Brian. Casper, can I come on to you very quickly, and then I'm going to, after Pierre's had a go, I'm going to try and get the audience to ask a few more questions. Casper, I wanted really to ask you, you described this amazing systems integration, the creation of a new technology platform through hosting an event. You gave the example of Incheon and of Beijing. I guess the question that comes to my mind, given that here in Europe, and I guess in North America, we live in a highly deregulated market where many different aspects of telecommunications are privatized, privately owned by different companies. Is this something that every kind of city can do, or are there some necessary preconditions for the sorts of integration that you described? What kind of city does it really work for, and what sort of city couldn't do it?
This is a good question.
Uh-huh.
And a difficult one.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, it can be done. And what it does need is visionary leadership. That's one. Someone very strong and charismatic to push the agenda through. Right? That's definitely one. So the more and now here I'm venturing into the political field, which is always difficult as a private entity, as a business. But we found that the more stable and the more strong a political leadership in a given city is, the easier it is for them to tender and implement a large network that supports a given event. So that's definitely one. Clearly, open standards are very important. So you want to build it in a way that everyone can connect to allow for this explosion of little services, big and small services, that use that platform to provide, value add to the spectator, to the community, for many, many, many years to come. I think these are the two most important aspects of that.
Okay, so it's really about leadership to overcome whatever are the barriers rather than the absence of the barriers.
It is leadership and clearly using the compelling event as something to focus the mind, just as they did in South Africa, right? I mean, crime was, if you remember before, I mean, the press went crazy about crime and the fact that it was just too dangerous to go and, I'm originally German. The German press is not as sensationalist as in England, but I mean, they certainly made, had horror stories up front, and ultimately none of that came through because the South African cities, especially the city of Johannesburg, really invested and implemented, and that is in an ultimately quite democratic environment.
Yes.
So I think it is. Definitely possible.
Great, thank you. Pierre, if I can come on to you and then we'll open up again. I mean, if you think of two places that are hosting major sports events in the next decade, Qatar, average temperature, middle of the day, 48 degrees. You think of Sochi or maybe some other parts of the Russian Federation, average temperature, middle of the day in winter, minus 20 degrees. Can these kinds of energy solutions that you were talking about in London actually work in these rather more dramatic and difficult environments? And what do you think should be the energy or the environmental legacy in places like Qatar and Sochi?
It's a very good question, like Caspar, for me. I have two answers. If I want to win good revenues, I said, well, you find a solution everywhere of the world. But if I take my citizen point of view, I think these two choices of cities for this event are quite difficult for us to find good solution in front of environment aspect. So I think we have to deal with solar energy and transform it in heating, in cooling, and other electricity system in Qatar, for of course. And for such a perhaps with a geothermal solution, we can look at this. But all over the world, the deal with energy is to find local solution. And I have no answer all over the world today. But GDF Suez try to find a solution all over and in front of different aspects of these different cities.
Fantastic answer, Pierre. I'm going to vote for you and give you a good review out of that. Casper, you want to comment?
Yeah, may I just maybe add, especially in the case of Qatar and the energy consumption, right? I mean, clearly cooling the buildings, cooling the stadia is going to consume a lot of energy. So there's the affordability point of view, which may not be as big an issue in Qatar as elsewhere, but there's also the PR impact of using so much energy. So I think, I mean, this is still many years out, this event, but I think the introduction of smart building systems, smart HVAC, cooling systems, all of that together, I think, in the case of Qatar, can bring the environmental impact significantly down. So that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, the floor's open again. Who'd like to come in? You've been quite shy so far. You're first, sir. It doesn't have to be one at a time. We can take a couple of questions. A very talented group of speakers here. Yes.
Alexei Polyakov, Russian Green Building Council. We have heard an excellent story about Olympic Park legacy, and we also have known that GDP Suez is already virtual gold medalist in London.
At least according to Boris Johnson.
Yes, yes. And what about second generation legacy? I mean, are you, London and Olympic Park legacy, are in position to transfer knowledge and share experience with Sochi, next Olympic host, in terms of sustainability, in terms of legacy, and so on? Would you like to be the second gold medalist with transferring this knowledge to Sochi? So it
sounds like you're making a very generous invitation to Andy. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope for invitation to be visit London rather than invited.
You want him to invite you?
Yes,
okay.
yes. A traditional Russian problem. I need invitation.
Traditional Russian proverb.
UK.
When will you invite me to come and see you? Yes. Okay. Andy, some comment on that?
Talk about this forum.
Yes.
Microphone. Sorry, microphone. Yeah. No. Well, first of all, we'd be happy to have you come to London and invite you. And one of the things that's been done by the Olympic Delivery Authority, the builders of the site, is something called the Learning Legacy. I don't have their website. It might be www.learninglegacy. And they have really put together a great program, which I'd be happy to get your information and tell you about, or maybe we can let the conference know.
Yes.
But it's a great learning about all the different aspects they've gone through, from construction, sustainability, planning, stadium design, etc. That's then absolutely available on the web for anybody who wants to use it. Secondly, we are working now with Rio. We have an agreement with Rio where their delegations come to London. We've gone to Rio to share that learning. Happy to do that with other cities as well, and to share information and also to help us critique what we're doing so we do it better. Yeah.
And just to make it even more explicit, we would like to invite anyone in the room who is involved in leading the preparation to host a major event to come to London to be with Andy's organisation and a number of other organisations on May the 29th, 30th and 31st of this year, 2012, for a special 3-day event, a 1.5-day workshop, a 1.5-day conference on hosting major events, learning the lessons from London. So we would love to see you all in London at that time. If you're interested in having a personal invitation, give me your business card at the end and I'll make sure that you get one. Okay? Who else would like to come in now to ask a question or make a point to our speakers? All feeling a bit shy still? Shall I continue with my provocative questions?
Greg, can I make a provocative comment?
Yes, you can. Take the microphone.
This is provocative. I've got to be very careful how I word this, because I am concerned as a planner, economist, environmentalist, financier and what have you, that we need to be precise or more precise in our use of language. Because we're losing meaning. You know, we talk about smart cities and green cities and, you know, we've got all of these labels. And the one that really gets me is sustainability. Now, let's not pretend that holding a major sports event is a sort of sustainable or a green solution. Talk about the green Olympics or the sustainable Olympics. This is propaganda, because clearly the most sustainable solution is not to have an Olympics at all. I mean, flying half the world across to watch a load of people running around a track for 2 weeks is not particularly green. But as a society, once we've decided, and we have decided, that these events are important for our well-being because they represent progress and they achieve a whole range of positive benefits, then the important thing is to make them as efficient and as green as possible. And I think that's what London has taught us. London has taught us that, you know, despite the, if you like, the negative aspects of holding these events, there are, you know, you can do it well, you can do it better, and you can do it in a more energy efficient and a greener way. It will never be green per se, but it can be greener than the previous one. It will never be sustainable per se, but it can be more sustainable than the previous one. And this is what I was thinking about earlier on today, because I went past the Qatar stand, you know, and the idea that all of these developments that are taking place are green or sustainable, of course, is clearly nonsense. Building a city in the desert is never going to be green. But the achievements and the quality of the development is fantastic, and it's certainly much, much better and far, far more energy efficient and far, far greener than the sorts of things that we were thinking of doing some time ago. So it's important, I think it's important to use the correct terminology and to think in relative terms rather than in absolute terms. I'm saying this because I was at the Smart Cities World Congress recently with Greg, and there was a presentation by someone who said we shouldn't be doing better with less. We should just be doing less. Well, you know, I don't agree with that. I think we've got to keep making progress. So it is about doing better with less, using less resources. And it is about being greener and more sustainable, even if we can't be green and sustainable per se.
Yes, and as you'll know, Brian, actually our colleagues in Amsterdam, anyone from Amsterdam here in the room? Our colleagues in Amsterdam have a proposition to bid for the Summer Olympics in a few cycles' time, where the idea is to minimise actually the number of spectators there, so you don't travel so many people in, but to make it almost a virtual Olympics. So the athletes are in the same place, competing against each other, but the audience is largely in the media, and the whole drive for this is an environmental drive. So it's interesting that some people are beginning to think in that way. I'm going to wrap up this session, actually, colleagues, because I don't believe in pursuing things if there's no real desire to kind of engage with questioning right away. I'm going to, on your behalf, thank our speakers, and then I'm going to introduce our final two speakers to come up on the stage. So please join me, if you will, in thanking Andrew Altman, Matteo Hernandez, Brian Field, Casper Hertzberg, and Pierre Guillard. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.